So it's like a heavy topic, but there's a lot to cover before we get to the death part. The death part's the end. So, but in order to understand how Judaism sees death in the afterlife, first let's like pan out and pan back and start with, how does Judaism see life? Because if you don't understand how you see life, then you're not really going to understand what death is. So let's like let's pull it way back. So by a show of hands, and if anybody could turn on their cameras just for this part, that would be great. Thank you, Abby, for turning on your camera. So here we go. If I would ask you, I'm going to take a poll. There's 3 choices. I'm going to tell you 3 choices, then we're going to take a show of hands, okay? If I were to ask you, do you think that we are a body, a soul, or both? Those are your 3 choices. Are we a body, a soul, or both? A show of hands. Who thinks we are a body? Raise your hand. Okay. Who thinks we are a soul? Raise your hand. And who thinks we are both? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So this is what I get, right? Most people think that we're both, right? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Rabbi Jacqueline, do you hear that? Is it possible to mute people? I just don't want it to.
Yes, I do have that. I do have that. Let's try to see what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Again, can we ask everyone to mute themselves? I don't want to be in control because I want you guys to be able to ask questions. Okay, is that any better? No.
Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I think it's good. If not, you'll just handle the technical. Okay, great. So most people say that we're both. Okay, that is not what Judaism says. I'm going to tell you what Judaism says, and then we're going to look at why most people think that we're both. So Judaism says, listen carefully, Judaism says you are a soul, you have a body. You hear that difference? You are a soul, you just have a body. So if that's true, why do people think that we're both? Because you just saw most hands went up at both. So like what, if that's not what it is, then why are we all getting so confused? But the reason we get confused is because we experience the conflict of both, right? We have these voices in our head that are talking to us all the time, and we hear those conversations, we feel the conflict, right? Now, show of hands, raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about, that you have voices in your head that talk to you all the time. Okay, if you're not raising your hand and you're sitting there saying, voice? What voice? I don't have any voice. Okay, that's the voice. You hear it now? It doesn't stop. It's always talking to you. And the truth is that we have more than one. We have at least 2. One is the voice of your soul that's talking to you. And one is the voice of your body that's talking to you. And then there's this midpoint. That's your free choice that gets to decide between the 2. So Freud sort of, identified this as your id, your ego, and your superego, right? Your id is the voice of your body, so to speak, like loosely translated. Your superego was like telling you what the right thing to do is, and your ego was like deciding between the 2. So this sort of echoes what Judaism is pointing to, but it goes a lot deeper. Judaism actually talks about 5 levels of your soul. Freud only mentions 3, but the 3 that Freud mentions and the bottom 3 that Judaism mentions sort of parallel each other. So it's like a nice place to start, just to get a rough sketch. What Judaism is talking about is you have this voice of your body and this voice of your soul, and then you decide between the 2. So the voice of your body, let's say, will want you to eat, let's say, chocolate cake. Right? It's enough about me, right? Talking about like advocating for the needs of your body. And then there's another voice, the voice of your soul, that will say, no, you got to eat healthy, and like will advocate for the needs of your soul. And then you hear these 2 arguments and you have to choose between the 2. When we hear these arguments, it's not always clear which voice is which, right? Because if we know that, of course, we all want to choose soul and we want to choose the higher thing. And sometimes, of course, you need to take care of your body, right? If you didn't listen to that voice, we would like die of hunger or starvation or sleep or cold or pain, right? Of course, you want to take care of your body. Rabbi Kalaman, who's a rabbi in Jerusalem, says that when we were a soul in heaven, before we were sent down to this world, God wanted to give us the greatest gift ever. And the greatest gift is to be a giver. So in order for us to always be in a state of giving, God gave us each a small child that we could take care of so that we would always be in a state of giving. And the small child that God gave us was our body. The way that our soul is supposed to relate to our body is the same way you take care of a small child. A small child doesn't always know what's best for them. But when they say they want something, it's not like, oh, you don't need that. Like, you have to pay attention to their needs and you have to take care of their needs. And at the same time, you have to train them to want more and to go higher and to delay instant gratification and to know what's good for them. So the way that Judaism sees the role of the soul and the body is you have to take care of the body, but you can't always just listen to the body. You have to be able to guide it towards something bigger. And this is not an idea that's exclusive to Judaism, because when something's true, you're going to see it everywhere, right? Judaism doesn't have a monopoly on the truth. If something is true, you're going to see it all over the place, right? So you see this idea in many religions of the conflict of body and soul and choosing soul. You see this even in secular places, right? Even atheists would agree that there's different pulls on you and the universe is sending you messages and all these things, because we experience this empirically to be true. And I really saw this the most in Oprah magazine. So this is an issue from January 2013. Okay, I was standing online at a supermarket, right, like all of us, and I just pulled something off the shelf and I found something and I'm like, this is like research. Like I still have it 7 years later. So there's an article in here. It says on the cover, let me see if you can see, this is the good thing about Zoom, is you can see what's on the cover of my magazine. So it says here, see that? Get to the heart of who you are. Advice from one of the wisest women we know. So I was like, well, gee, what's that about? So it's this woman whose books I've never read, and I'm not advocating them. I don't know. I did open one of them once and it didn't speak to me, so I'm not advocating it, but this is who Oprah thinks is the wisest woman. This woman, Carolyn Miss. Anybody know her? She's apparently well known. I'd never heard of her before. And Oprah and Carolyn on like Oprah's section of Soul Sunday, they had this whole conversation, this whole interview about the soul. So I just want to read you a small excerpt, and then we'll talk about how this relates to Judaism. So they're sitting there, they're talking about the soul, and they call it the spirit. Okay, that's the word that they use, the spirit. So Oprah says, what is this thing you're talking about, the spirit? Can you explain it for our readers? So she says, the soul is the light of you. So then Oprah says, you've said from a spiritual perspective that the entire physical world is nothing more than our classroom, and that everything is a challenge for us to decide whether to make choices that enhance our spirit or drain our power. And Carolyn answers, that's right. You should see everything in your life as a lesson. Ask, am I empowering myself, even for a tiny thing? Now listen to this. Like if you're in the grocery store and you're thinking, should I buy that? And your gut says, you know, you can't eat that. If you decide not to listen, you've harmed yourself by blocking your intuitive voice. So now look at this. Judaism talks about how there are these two voices, right? The voice of your body, the voice of your soul. How do you tell the difference? So Judaism gives us a cheat sheet. How do you tell the difference? So there's a few different things. One thing is Ronald Weinberg, my husband's Rosh Hashiva, Satzal, blessed memory. So he said, the way you tell the difference between the voice of your body and the voice of your soul is the voice of your body will tell you what you feel like doing. You feel like eating that chocolate cake. The voice of your soul will tell you what you really want. You want to be healthy. You just feel like eating chocolate cake. You want to wake up early. You feel like sleeping in. You want to be a patient person. You feel like screaming, right? Everybody relates to this. Yes, this makes sense. So the voice of your body is telling you what you feel like. The voice of your soul is telling you what you want. Second way you could cheat your way through this. My husband says the voice of your soul will always sound calm. And the voice of your body will always sound insistent, right? I have to have that chocolate cake. Oh my gosh, I need it. It's this. I have to sleep in. I'm going to die if I get up, right? It's always like pushing at you like a child would. And the voice of your soul is like that wise old teacher that looks up from her books and says, you know what? You don't need it right now. You can do something better, right? What you want versus what you feel like. Rav Dessler, who was a rabbi who lived in London in the 20th century, says this. He says, the voice of your body will always say, I. And the voice of your soul will always say you. So the voice of your body will say, I need that chocolate. I have to have it, because the body is advocating for its needs. It doesn't see anyone. It's just like a small child just doesn't know there's anyone else out there, right? They're not really selfish. I mean, I guess in the healthiest sense of the word they are. They're not trying to be inconsiderate. A child just only knows, I want what I want. And if you're sleepless or you're sick or whatever, that doesn't matter. We're in public, you're embarrassed. They don't care, right? They want what they want. So your body, the voice of your body is just like a small child, and will say I, because it doesn't see anything else. And the voice of the soul will always say you, because it's not forcing you to do anything. Now, look back at this Oprah. Let me read you what I just read again. Ask, am I empowering myself, even for a tiny thing? Like if you're in the grocery store and you're thinking, should I buy that? And your gut says, you know you can't eat that. You see that? They just captured something that Judaism has been talking about for thousands of years. The voice of your body will always say I. The voice of your soul will always say you. So what's universal is, as we're walking through planet Earth, we're dancing on this tightrope of, how do I live like a soul in a physical world? How do I choose better? How do I choose higher? Everybody's grappling with that. But what Judaism is doing is, it's giving us signposts. It's giving us answers. It's giving us something we can hold onto, practical, that's saying, here's how you navigate this world. This is what the Torah is all about, right? The word Torah is very often not translated. People treat it like an English word, Torah, and it means like Jewish literature, Jewish lore, Jewish stories, Jewish law. It's like this very like amorphous, vague word. But the word Torah is a Hebrew word, so it has a translation. The word Torah is the same as the word Mora. You all know what a Mora is, right? I'll read your lips. What is a Mora?
Teacher.
A teacher, right? So the word Mora and Torah come from the same word, the same root, lahorot, which means to teach or to show. So if a Mora is a teacher, a Torah means teachings. So the driving manual in Israel is called Torat Hanihiga, instructions for driving. Our Torah is called Torat Chaim, instructions for living. Life is complicated, but you do not have to reinvent the wheel. They call us the people of the book because we wrote it all down. You're not in this alone. You don't have to figure this out by yourself. We've been at this thing called life for thousands of years. So take the cheat sheet, help figure it out. So what Judaism is pointing us towards is that as we're walking through life, what we want to do is, when we have these choices, body or soul, we want to choose soul and we don't want to choose body. And sometimes you need to choose body to take care of yourself. But when we're dancing through life, it's, who do you identify with, your body or your soul? So let me show this to you as by way of an example, so you really get what I mean. Let's take a classic body-soul conflict, like getting healthy, right? Now, people would think getting healthy and eating healthy and joining a gym, they would think that's a body choice, unless you've ever done it, in which case, you have to overcome your body to go to the gym and eat healthy. And the body wants to sit on the couch and eat ice cream. At least mine does. So maybe I'm alone in this, but that's what your body wants. Your body does not want to get healthy and go to the gym and leave me alone. But let's say you make the choice, you want to get healthy. Okay, so you join a gym. What's the first thing you do when you join a gym? You go shopping, right? Everybody knows that. You have to get the right bag and the right outfit and the sneakers and right. Okay, now 6 weeks later, you haven't gone to the gym. You look great, right? Totally out of shape, but you got the bag and you look great. And now you finally schlep yourself to the gym. Okay, so you're at the gym and you go to your first workout class, right? Whether it's, aerobics or spinning or whatever it is that you do. How do you feel? You feel horrible, right? Charlie horsed and awkward and embarrassed. Everybody else is 10 years younger than you and much better than you. And you're 2 left feet and you feel horrible. And you've used muscles you've never used. One of my 12-year-old just had a push-up thing with my husband. He did 10 push-ups. The whole next day, he's like, oh, I'm in such pain. I'm like, you're out of shape, man, right? When you're out of shape, everything hurts you. So the next day, how do you feel? You feel like my son felt. You feel worse, right? Now you have a decision to make. Do you go back to the gym to continue on your quest to get healthy? Or do you throw in the towel and say, forget it, this is too hard, I'm not doing this, okay? The soul choice is to get healthy. The body choice is to be lazy and stay home and quit, because the body is affected by gravity. See, your soul is not affected by gravity. Your soul is spiritual, but your body is physical. So gravity makes us lazy. That's universal. So the body doesn't want to do it. So now you have this choice to make. So imagine you follow the soul choice and you decide, no, we are going back to the gym. So you schlep yourself back to the gym for, an hour, 3 times a week, okay, whatever it is, for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks of 3 times a week at the gym, how does your body feel? Amazing, right? And if it's raining and you can't get to the gym, what does your body say? Your body's like, I gotta get to the gym, right? Because your body gets on board very quickly. Your soul is flying because you reached a goal, right? Your soul is like, you feel great about life. You feel happy. It's like a totally different place. But now go back to that moment where you had to choose body, soul, go to the gym, stay home. Let's say you would have said, you know what? Forget it. I'm staying home. Body, I'm sorry, my bad, you're right. But now we have this open slot, 3 times a week. What should we do with that free hour? So your body has that answer. There's a great show on Netflix, and there's Ben and Jerry's in the freezer, and we got this. So 3 times a week, you sit on the couch, you watch TV, and you eat an entire pint of Ben and Jerry's for 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, how does your body feel? Horrible, right? Because now your soul checked out. When we do this stuff to ourselves, when we abuse our bodies, your soul's like gone. Like your soul, obviously you don't drop dead, God forbid, but your soul is like, it distances. You have a less spiritual awareness when we wallow, because Judaism teaches us with these 5 levels of our soul, the more we choose soul, the more we sort of get in touch with our soul. And the more we choose body, the more we're like not identifying with our soul. We identify with the body. It actually affects us. But when we choose body, and when we sit on the couch and we eat ice cream and we do the whole thing and we identify as a body, not only is our soul unhappy, our body's unhappy. See, that's the plot twist. You would think the body got what it wanted, the body is happy. But the body's like a child. If your child begs you for ice cream and candy and let me stay up late and let me do nothing, the child feels sick, right? There's no point where your soul gets on board and said, oh, this is wonderful, feeling horrible, looking terrible. I love this, right? But even your body isn't happy when you choose body. When you choose soul, your soul is happy and your body's happy, because the body always gets on board when you choose soul. Whenever we choose higher, like at high tide, all boats rise. When we choose soul, the body ends up being happier. So as we're going through life, what we want to keep doing is choosing soul all the time when we have these 2 things pulling at us. So how does this play into life after death? Well, imagine, how many choices do we have every day? Dozens, hundreds, thousands, right? There's always a choice. Do you smile? Do you be mean? Do you let the guy in traffic? Do you not, right? Do you go to bed early? Do you go to bed? There's a million choices we're making all day. If we spent our lives identifying as a soul, we're at one place at the end of our lives. If we spent our lives identifying as a body, not being considerate, only caring about ourselves, being totally focused on what's good for me, you do that enough times, dozens of times a day, every day, for year after year, decade after decade, you're at a different place. And not getting into how you can, people say you can see on a person's face at the end of their life, you see their personality comes out, right? If somebody's bitter and angry, their face looks bitter and angry. And if somebody is kind and happy, their face looks different. The Hebrew word for face is panim, which comes from panimiut, which means internality, because your face shows something about who you are. It's not like that with any other part of your body. Like no one ever said, did you see the look on her elbow, right? It's not a thing. But the look on your face, it says something about you, about your mood, about your personality. It's the eyes are the window to the soul. That's true. Right? This is why Judaism, other religions may have a thing that they cover the face. I'm not getting into other religions. It's not a Jewish thing, because your face shows who you are, right? Panim is very important to show a person's pnimiyut, their internality. At the end of a person's life, death is the moment that body and soul separate. That's what we call that moment. Death is the moment that body and soul separate. It says that that moment, if we spent our whole lives choosing soul, it says that moment is a very easy moment. My husband says that your body, when you're on planet Earth, your body is like the scuba suit for your soul. The same way your body cannot exist in an underwater world, and it needs something to help it live there. So our souls also, our souls are a spiritual being. They can't exist in a physical world. They need something to like weigh them down, let them speak, let them exist in a physical world. So if we knew the whole time, the body's just a scuba suit. It's not the real me. I am my soul. I have a body. If we live that, and it's a struggle, it's not easy. Because when I look in the mirror and I see my face, I think that's me. But if we can live in this way and know I am a soul, I just have a body, then that moment of separation is not so complicated. I think the mystical works say that it's taking a hair out of milk. It goes easily. But if we spent our whole lives identifying as a body and being selfish and taking care of the physical world and not taking care of our spiritual self, then that moment is like pulling a thorn out of cotton. It just doesn't go. Because I thought I was my body and now I'm not. That's a very difficult moment. So how we live is going to take us to this place of who we are at that moment. Once body and soul separate, so Judaism has a tremendous respect, a veneration for the body, because since the body has housed the soul, we say the body has tremendous holiness. So there's a very big deal about a Jewish burial, and the way that we treat the body from the moment of death is with a tremendous respect and dignity. So some of the customs that we have, not all, I can't go into all of them, it's a whole thing, but some of the customs that we have, we never leave the body alone for a moment. There's always someone with the body saying psalms, praying next to the body. We light a candle. The candle symbolizes the soul. The same way flames always go up, the soul goes up. It symbolizes this spiritual connection. The way that we prepare the body for burial is as if someone's going to a mikvah. So we clean every part of the body. There's a group of people called the Chevra Kadisha, which means the Holy Society. There's one in every community. There's one where you live in Houston and Dallas, and like usually nobody knows who they are. Smaller communities you might, but usually it's like very quiet. Nobody talks about it. But when someone dies, they're called in, usually men for men and women for women, and they clean the entire body under the fingernails and the hair. They clean any dirt, any blood, completely clean the body. But the way that they clean the body shows tremendous respect because they only uncover the part that they're working on. Other than that, the body is completely covered all the time out of dignity. And we're taught that the soul is there with the body. There's a direct connection. So you're aware the soul of this person is here. The Chevra Kadisha are not allowed to talk about anything that doesn't have to do with the tahara. The way that when we clean the body, it's called a tahara, which means a purification. They can't speak about anything except that has to do with the cleaning of the body. You cannot pass anything over the body out of respect. You can't eat in that room. And when the Chevra Kadisha is done, they put the body into like burial shrouds. It's a special white clothing that's just for burial. It has no pockets because you don't take anything with you. And there's a hood for the face, and the knots are tied in a special way. And when they leave, the head of the Chevra Kadisha steps into the room and apologizes to the soul. If we did anything that caused you any pain, please forgive us. Because the soul is there and the dignity of the body is directly connected to the soul. Once we have the burial, so in Israel, it's an interesting custom. We don't really have coffins in Israel. They just wrap the body, and the body goes, because we want the body to, it says the body is made from dust and the body returns to dust. So we're not really into cremation. It's not really a Jewish idea. The soul has a connection to seeing the body decompose, and there's something very cathartic about that for the soul, seeing the body that was made from dust go back to dust. So the coffin gets in the way of that. So in America, there's a law, a body must be in a coffin. So we have very traditionally, I'm not telling anybody what to do. God forbid, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just saying this is traditionally what Judaism does, and everybody do what you want. So we traditionally have simple pine coffins, and there's usually a hole in the coffin so that the body is in direct contact with the dirt, so the body returns to the dirt as quickly as possible as the body decomposes. And seeing the body decompose sort of reinforces to the soul, see, that was never me. There's a certain catharsis, a certain comfort in that, like that and it's slow. So the body sees like that was the soul sees, excuse me, that the body was never me, and the soul has a separate existence that isn't connected to the body. The soul is eternal, the body is finite. The burial itself is also very conscious of the soul being there. If you've ever been into Jewish traditional burial, there's many ways that, Jewish funerals go, but a traditional funeral, when they lower the body in, they very often, if you've ever seen this, they'll cut the people, the family, the friends will bury the body themselves, right? There's a shovel that they pass around. They don't hand it one to the other, but they usually put in 3 shovelfuls of dirt. We turn this shovel backwards to gently push dirt into the grave to show that we're not eager to do this mitzvah, but we know it's a mitzvah and we're going to do it. And very often you'll sometimes see that people stay until the whole grave is filled in, which is not an easy job. But the reason why they do this is because the soul stays with the body until the grave is filled in, and then the soul goes. So we want like the beloved people, the loved ones of that soul, to be there for that send-off. And at some traditional funerals, they'll even call out the name of the person. Your name is, Avraham ben Yaakov or Sarah ben Avraham, right? They call out the name of the person 3 times because it says when the soul departs to heaven, it has to say its Hebrew name to get in, and the soul in its confusion may forget. So we say the name 3 times. This is your name. This is your name. Don't forget, this is your name. And once we bury the body, the soul goes. Something I left out, but I want to put in here. It's a Jewish tradition also that when, and nobody's ever died and come back and told us, but we have a lot of tradition in the mystical works about this, that when a person dies, it says that their loved ones come to greet them, because when a person dies, the soul is usually very afraid. So the loved ones who have already died come to greet the soul. I don't know if you've ever heard stories. I know in my family, I had one cousin when I was little. I was 7. I had a cousin who died when he was 4 from leukemia. And I was a kid, so I didn't really get it so much. I knew, Joshy had leukemia, and I was 7 when he died. And the whole thing is like a little foggy. But one thing I remember is when he died, right before he died, he was in bed at home. And he said to his parents, "Who's that old lady?" And there was no one else in the room. So who was it? This bubby, that bubby, right? Like we think about it. I remember during the whole Shiva, we were little kids. I think I'm the 3rd oldest in my family. So my brother, I was 7. My brother is 15 months older than me. He was 8.5, and a lot of little cousins. The oldest cousin was 8.5 in a house full of kids. And, we don't understand Shiva. We're running around playing, and somebody said to the kids, like, have some respect, like stop running around playing. And my uncle, the father of the boy who had passed away, said, let them play. I want to hear happy children playing. When we're at a Shiva, there's an idea of the soul being connected to the Shiva house, especially if it's in the house where the person lived. But even if not, there's a connection of the soul to the Shiva house. So once the soul leaves at that moment of burial, the soul goes to heaven, but it's still connected to the Shiva. So usually at a Shiva house, traditionally, again, people do different things. I'm not telling anybody what to do. But during the Shiva is really for the people who survived. It's not for the person who passed away. It's for the people who lived. So it's like one of the most psychologically healthy mitzvahs that, I'm sure there's many more, but for me, in my limited capacity, right, it lets the mourners sit on the floor. And you don't have to make small talk. Sometimes Shiva has become like, an open house and there's a bagel tray and people are coming and going, a lot of small talk. And I'm not passing judgment on anything or anyone, and everybody does what they need to do. But traditionally, for thousands of years, that's not really what Shiva has been. Shiva has been the mourner sits on a low stool We're not supposed to greet the mourner. We wait for the mourner to speak to us because maybe they don't feel like talking right now. Or maybe they don't want to talk to you right now, right? It's not about us, the people visiting. It's about the mourners. So traditionally, we don't speak to them. We wait for them to speak to us, and they don't say hello. They don't introduce anybody. They sit low on the floor, and whatever they want to talk about, we talk about. There's a candle burning in the Shiva house for the whole 7 days to signify that soul. And the Shiva is for the mourner. But what's going on with the soul? So Judaism teaches us this. Judaism teaches us that when the soul gets to heaven, it goes through a certain process of processing the life that it just completed and what that means in sort of like this spiritual perspective. So you ever see the movie, it's an old movie, Defending Your Life? It's with Al Brooks and Meryl Streep. It was made in 1991, which shockingly enough was almost 30 years ago, which is hard for me to believe, but 1991 was almost 30 years ago. And it's this movie where Al Brooks has died. He had a head-on collision with a bus, and next thing he knows, he's in heaven, and heaven sort of looks like, this depressed Disneyland, and there's like monorails taking different people to different hotels, and they're all wearing like these Greek togas sort of things. And he gets a phone call while he's in his like crummy hotel from a guy who's his lawyer, who says like, your court case is tomorrow. He's like, my court case? What are you talking about? Where am I? And he's like, you're in heaven and you have a court case tomorrow. Okay, so he shows up and he's like, where am I? What's going on? So he says, we're going to be showing a film of your life and you need to defend your life, and I'm your lawyer and I'm here to help you, but there's a prosecution also. So he's like, just like, what? He's totally confused, and how many days are they going to look at and all these different things. He goes to the courtroom. There's his lawyer, there's his prosecutor, and then there's two judges and him. And every once in a while they say, let's look at, day number, whatever, when you were 11 years old. And he turns around and the room goes dark and they show this clip of his life, of when he did this or that and this. And it's all these like embarrassing moments. He punched somebody in the nose, or he got punched and he didn't stand up for himself. And it goes through his life and he has to defend his life. Meanwhile, Meryl Streep, this woman that he meets, like he's staying in like this crummy motel. She's staying like at the Ritz with chandeliers, and the movies of her life are like, the house was on fire, but she went back in for the cat. It's like she's like this amazing woman, and they fall in love and blah, blah, blah. It's like this whole movie. So of course, none of that's true. But the one sliver there is Judaism teaches us there's sort of this, to use modern terms, this movie of your life. And you're shown your whole life, and you have to sort of defend your life. It says everything's captured and everything is seen. And then this movie is shown sort of in public, whatever that means, with everybody watching, whatever that means. And we become the best defense attorneys ever. We're our own defense attorneys. And after, we see our lives and all the mistakes we made, we're like, yeah, but that's not my fault. That's because I didn't have enough money. So what did you want from me? Or I had so much money, I didn't understand. Or, well, I had those parents. Or like, well, my brother was like that. Or my sister, that teacher in 3rd grade, like, this is totally not my fault. And we have all the best excuses in the world. And then God, the only judge, says 2 words that makes us go silent. He says, Ani Hashem, which means I'm God. Who do you think gave you that economic status? Who gave you those parents, that brother, that sister, that teacher in the 3rd grade? It's like I read in Oprah before, not to quote Oprah as the source, but like I read in Oprah before, Judaism is teaching us our whole lives are taking us somewhere. And each of us has our own sort of spiritual obstacle course. Those of you who are on the momentum trip, we call it HP, right? Hashgacha Pratit, higher providence, right? Where there is a guiding force that's taking us somewhere in our lives. You meet this person, or you went to that college, you were born in this country, in this century, you speaking this language. Your skills were like this, and your flaws were like that. Your flaws are also purposeful. And we married this person and that marriage didn't work out. And we had this child and this relationship didn't work out. And we had this job and that didn't work out. What does work out and what doesn't work out? It's all taking us exactly where we need to be. You know, I tell this story, I'm not going to tell now because I don't want to go over time, but I tell this story to a different class about, it's a famous story. It's not my story that I made up, about an eagle egg that fell out of the nest and rolled into the chicken coops. Anybody know this story? It's a very famous story. This eagle egg falls out of the eagle nest and rolls into a chicken coop. And when they hatch, this eagle ends up being raised as a chicken. And the eagle doesn't have a mirror. He doesn't know he looks any different. He just thinks he's a chicken. And the mother hen's this very like open-minded sort of hen. And she just accepts him with all her little chicks. And she teaches them all how to scratch at the dirt and be a chicken. And the eagle's growing up to be a good little chicken. And he's out in the barnyard one day, minding his own business, trying to be a chicken, until something catches his eye. It's this eagle. And he never saw a bird look so majestic. And he's like, Mom, I want to do that. And she says, Junior, don't be ridiculous. You're a chicken. You can't fly that high. Like, come on. And the eagle says, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Very embarrassed. But he keeps seeing the eagle, and he keeps like getting distracted by this beautiful flight. And everyone around him tells him he's crazy, but he can't get it out of his head. So one day he's like, you know, maybe I can fly. Looks around, nobody's there. He spreads his wings and he flies. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm a chicken that can fly. This is like unbelievable. A few days more, he looks around, flies again. One day he flies to the top of the barnyard. And he's like, oh my gosh, I can fly. And then something catches his eye. It's the eagle again. But since he's on top of the barn, the eagle sees him too. And the eagle circles once and he circles twice and he's looking at him like, Neil, you coming or not? And the eagle doesn't know what to do. Looks back at the barnyard, everything familiar, everything he came from. Looks up at this soaring eagle, everything he wants, everything he's ever dreamt of. And he decides, you know, I'm still a bird. I'm just that kind of bird. And he flies off with the eagle. So that's how we want the story to end. But there's another way the story ends, which is actually how the story is written. If you would Google the story, that's not the ending you're going to find. The ending really is, and the eagle was too afraid. And the eagle went back to being a chicken. And the eagle lived out his life as a depressed chicken, blaming his mother. That's how the story really ends. And the way I heard the story was my daughter was in a school in Jerusalem and they had to give a model lesson. And my daughter's friend wanted to give this story as part of her model lesson. So she went to her rabbi, the head of the school, and she said, I want to tell the story. Is this a story I can tell kids? And she tells them the whole story, and the eagle lives out his life as a chicken. And the rabbi said, you can tell the story, but you have to change the ending. You cannot tell children that ending. The ending has to be, and the chicken and the eagle flew off with the eagles. That's what you tell children. And here's the point. How many times do all of us choose fear? Choose what's familiar. You know, play it small. And what Judaism would say is, look, you know, other people needed to be born, you know, in the eagle nest at the top of the tree with the mother eagle to know that they're an eagle, but not you. Your soul's journey was that you got kicked out of the nest and you were raised with chickens, and everyone around you told you you were crazy to think that you could fly, and you still chose to fly. That was supposed to be your path to greatness. Why didn't you choose it? Because you were afraid? Because you thought you would fail? Because you didn't know God was there the whole time? Choose soul, choose higher. Everyone around you will tell you you're crazy. You know why? Because they're chickens. And for them, it is crazy. For a chicken, it is crazy to fly to the top of the barn. A chicken can't do that. But the problem is you're not a chicken. The problem is you're an eagle. But this is true for everyone around us. What we recognize as like catches our eye and captures our imagination and captures our soul, it resonates with you because it's familiar. There's something there that is part of you. That's why it's catching our eye. And what's going to catch our eye is different for all of us. This is why it's so important to be tolerant and open-minded and not take our experiences and put them on somebody else. Because yes, we want to give our friends good advice, but good advice for them, not for us. And what Judaism is pointing us towards is choosing soul will always take us to a higher place. When we see that movie, you know, there's certain moments where we're going to feel like, that was me. Yeah, here I am, right? Really proud, really happy. Like, yes, I nailed it that time. And, you know, thank God, I hope we have many, many, many moments like that. Say amen. And there's also those moments that embarrass us, that we feel ashamed because we know I could have done more and I should have done more. And I would have done more. I just didn't know it was being recorded. I didn't know it mattered so much. I didn't know that person was going through such a hard time that I should have been nice to them. And I was just, you know, distracted because I was angry because whatever. And Judaism says that is the burning shame. Like when people talk about hell, it's not fire and brimstones. Judaism, we call it Gehenna, right? We don't believe in fire and brimstones and the devil and like, that's not us. But there is a pain the soul goes through when we realize I didn't take every opportunity that was given to me. I wasted some part of what my life could have been. And that burning shame, that's the pain of Gehenna, of just knowing I failed myself. I failed God. I had more I could have done and I should have done and I would have done and I didn't. That feeling, that's the burning shame of Gehenna. But it's temporary, right? One of my rabbis said, like, trying to explain Gehenna, he said, look, do you have hospitals in the city where you live? Yes. Top-rate hospitals? Yes, top-rate hospitals. Do you ever want to go into one of them as a patient? No. But if you ever need one, aren't you glad they're there? That's what Gehenna is. We don't want to go in, but if we did things wrong, we want to get rid of it. Who wants to live with guilt or shame forever, for eternity? That's not a Jewish idea. When we go through that shame, we move through it. When we go through pain, we get rid of it. My husband has a book. I don't like the book, but I like the title. The title is Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Pushing something down is not going to help us. Working through it, being honest with it, facing it, then we can let it go. So that's what Gehenna is for the soul. The mistakes that we made, it could last a moment. For horrible, horrible people, could last a year. We say Kaddish for somebody who's passed away only for 11 months because we assume nobody who we know and love was ever there for a whole year. 11 months is the max. Hopefully we don't have to go through it at all. And if we do, a second and like we're done. It is a temporary thing. Then once your soul is cleansed, right, sort of like a dry cleaners for the soul, then we spend eternity. So what does eternity look like according to Judaism? And I'll finish with this. I see my time is coming to a close here. Eternity according to Judaism is, imagine a theater and God is center stage. Now, we don't really experience so much passive pleasure, but that pleasure for a soul, it's a spiritual pleasure. There's no physical pleasure in heaven. That's why you have no pockets. It doesn't, you're not taking anything with you. That spiritual pleasure of being near God, that is the greatest pleasure the soul could have. And the way it's explained in sort of colloquial terms is the seat that we get depends upon how we acted in this world. This world is called the world of action. That's why Judaism is a religion of action. Mitzvot are things that we do. You have to do something about it. Meaning if you think you're a person of charity and you never write a check to charity or give it any of your time or volunteer ever, guess what? You're not. You're not a person of charity because charity has to happen. Charity is not an idea that we believe in. You either did it or you didn't. So this world is the world of action, and every mitzvah is yours forever. It's not all or nothing. You know, if you, I don't know, let's say Shabbat candles, right? If you light Shabbat candles once a month, it's not like, oh, 1 out of 4, that doesn't count. Yes, it does. 1 out of 4 counts. You can keep Shabbat for 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes are yours forever. You can keep kosher 1 meal a week. That's not all or nothing. You can say, you know, I won't eat this one food anymore. Or like Friday night dinner, I buy kosher chicken. That's a notch. That counts. That's there. And action is there. It's yours forever. This is the only place where we do actions. In the next world, it's like whatever level we got to, we're frozen there. So the seat that we get in the theater, so to speak, is dependent upon what we chose in this world. Now we become the sum total of all of those choices, of all of those days and years and decades. We become the sum total of that choice. Some people get a front row seat. Some people get the nosebleed section. Some people get an obstructed view, right? It all depends upon how we act in this world. The way that we've moved forward in this world is exactly what Rabbi Abrams and Rabbi Jackman started this class with, which is after a person passes away, actions that we do in this world in their honor move their soul forward. Because what it means is that because that person lived, actions are still being performed because of them. So if you could imagine the usher walking up to someone and saying, excuse me, I have to move your seat up. You know, your great grandson down there just did a mitzvah in your honor, said a bracha, dedicated a class, dedicated a building, gave a nickel, whatever it is. The way that we are connected to the people that we love who have moved on to that next world is we keep doing mitzvot for them in their honor. So this world is the world of action where we choose to be a soul. And the next world is the world of being where we sort of coast, we sort of float there and we continue to do things. Judaism does believe in reincarnation. So it is possible to come back into this world and to have another shot. But when we deal with this, Judaism does not speak about the next world in the Torah, in the Chumash, in the 5 books. And that is because of this. And I'll end with this idea because this is really like this is the punchline. Judaism wants us focused on the here and now. We don't do things because I'll get rewarded the next world. We do things so that our family who's already passed on will get reward. We do things for them. But for us, we choose the right thing because it gives you a great life here. Not because it's going to give us a great life in a different reality. It's going to give us a great life here. It's like the Torah is telling us, look, you could be an angry, vindictive, selfish, petty, jealous person. Like, go ahead, knock yourself out. Like, no one's going to stop you. But like, heads up, people like that are miserable. Have you noticed? People like that are not happy. The happy people, the fabric, the spiritual fabric of planet Earth is the people who enjoy their time here are kind and giving and charitable and forgiving and self-starters. All of the thing the Torah is pointing us towards, it's because the Torah is Torah Chaim. The Torah is the instruction manual for planet Earth. And we do mitzvot not because of the next world. We do mitzvot because in this world, it will make our lives better. So I'll finish with this. We just finished Sukkot, and today is the Rosh Chodesh. We're heading into a new month. They say have a good winter, right? Have a good winter because it's like the next holiday is not till Hanukkah, right? It's late in the year. What we need to focus on is like every small choice that we make makes a difference. Every small choice that we make, you're building yourself. You're building your family. It has a direct impact on your children. Even the children who are already born, when we as parents choose the right thing, I've seen an instantaneous change in my kids. If I see my kids have a problem with like patience and I work on my own patience, I see it affects them immediately. They don't even know I'm working on it. There's a spiritual physics that's going on. Every choice we make makes a difference. So as we head away from the holidays and into this long winter, meaning doesn't stop at the synagogue. Meaning stays with us in all those body, soul moments. So my bracha to all of us is we should be able to choose soul and be able to really build ourselves into the great people that we could be.